Okay. Dr. Darian, taking into account the substantial disruptions that COVID-19 has caused the industry, particularly in the tuna sector, how do you think producers, processors, and consumers have adapted to this current challenge?
Okay, thank you, Charlene, and hello to everyone, whatever time zone you're listening in. I think I would definitely echo what Phil has just said. I think he describes, for all of us, how the tuna industry has felt. And I agree, we're not out of the weeds of this yet. I think this pandemic still has a few surprises in store from us, but we've also learned some really valuable lessons. I think from the supply chain and the processor side, it's the value of having a diverse supply chain and really knowing your suppliers, having an in-depth relationship with them so that when you do have these challenges thrown up at you, one, you can maneuver quickly and be nimble if you need to move your supply chains in a different direction, but two, that you have the trust and the faith in your suppliers and that supply chain that you're able to do so, and that you work collaboratively to make sure that you have your supply working to get to the processing facilities that you need. On the consumer side, we've seen, the rush of products purchased, particularly for canned tuna, as pantry essentials. So in different countries, as you've seen panic buying, canned tuna has been one of those staples that has literally flown off the shelves, at first from the big bulk retailers and then from all retailers. And that is, it was an unprecedented demand, but if you had the flexibility within your supply chains, within your processing operations, you were able to respond. So I think what it's shown us to date is that when you're looking along the whole value chain, it's having the opportunity to be flexible, to have known relationships, and that you can work collaboratively to meet both the challenges of supply and demand.
Back to you, Dr. Darian. If you could just add on, or perhaps along the same lines, the importance and the role of sustainability has been, do you think that it has been affected in any way? And would you be able to give us a short-term or a long-term trend on what we could expect in this area?
Thank you. So I absolutely agree with Luciano that sustainability remains important and traceability is a very important part of that story. But I think some of the interesting trends that I can see coming out is the emphasis both on people and the environment. And that really underlines why we need sustainability, particularly in this industry. Now, the people aspect to me that's shown up through the COVID-19 crisis is that supply chains are made up of people and of humans. And when we look at where there have been weaknesses in supply chains, the links tend to be where humans are, and how do we protect them? How do we make sure that they have safe working environments, that they can get to where their job is, that they can continue to do their job? And it's forced us to think about a supply chain is not just a process, it's not just a factory, it's not just a fishing vessel, it is people working at each of these stages. And so I think as businesses, we need to really put people at the heart of what we're doing, because we know we need them. And we've seen what happens when we don't have healthy workers in our supply chains. So I believe that is both a short-term trend as we manage through this current situation, but it's also going to be a longer-term trend. And particularly when you're looking at migration, where are workers coming from, factory automation, there are so many questions that will arise. The other side is the environment. And what you're seeing now is the United Nations, the World Health Organization, WWF, all are making statements that pandemics like the one that we currently have are largely due to our interventions with nature and perhaps not having the balance between humankind and nature. And I think that's going to have a definite impact. If you look at the importance of the ocean, whether it is from a resilience perspective, a climate change perspective, temperature regulation, there are so many factors that mean The health of people is directly linked to the health of the oceans. And I think you're going to really start to see the trend for protecting the oceans for a number of different reasons. Whether you're looking at, say, the high-level panel for a sustainable ocean economy and how they link climate change management in particular to the activities that we're doing on the oceans, or the big push that you see now for the 30 by 30 protection of the oceans. So looking at how do we protect the open oceans and international waters, perhaps from fishing and mining activities. And that is something that obviously I'm sure all of the panelists here today are looking at on ocean conservation. But, you know, that's a 10-year trend if we're looking at how we interact, particularly from the seafood industry, with the open oceans.
Another question on sort of conservation and management measures. How do we ensure that we don't compromise our conservation and management measures as we look at mitigating the measures and restrictions in ports arising from the pandemic? I'm not sure, Phil, if you would be able to take that question.
Well, it's a huge topic, isn't it? I mean, on purse seiners in the Western Central Pacific, throughout the Pacific, observer coverage is obligatory. But because of the problems of having observers on the boats for so long, the RFMOs agreed to waive the observer requirements for a certain time on a temporary basis. So in their place, we have e-reporting, you know, the use of e-logbooks and so on, which were there in the first place. I think in the end, you know, activities now are so closely monitored by satellites, whether it's AIS or VMS or whatever the tracking system used. It's not so easy for boats to just fish illegally as it used to be years and years ago, right? There's a level of monitoring today which is actually quite sophisticated. Now, is it perfect? No, nothing is perfect in this world. But you know, the COVID crisis definitely does present a challenge to monitoring, control, and you know, the enforcement of conservation and management measures. But I think you know, the parties concerned, the regulatory authorities, whether they're coastal states or RFMOs, regional organisations like PNA Office, they're doing their utmost to maintain a fairly high level of monitoring regardless. So I'm personally, I don't think there are any serious issues that I see in the Western Pacific, and for that matter, not in the other major oceans as far as the purse seine fleet is concerned. I think there are always concerns with some of the, perhaps the longline activities, but I don't think COVID per se has made those any worse. Those problems were there and they were being addressed. So that's my take on it today.
Thank you, Phil.
Maybe I could just say something on building on what Phil said. To me, the wider introduction of e-observers on vessels and that paired with an increased use of e-audits is really heralding in a whole kind of new world where we bring technology in for better observation of activities. And you see this trend happening, again, it was something Phil commented on in his opening remarks, that we've had these technology leaps that would have taken 5 years previously and have happened in a matter of months. And I think e-observers, e-audits, and how those programs all match together are really going to bring in a whole different system of transparency and traceability. And we aren't there yet. We aren't seeing the end product, but we're seeing all of those building blocks coming into place. We're proving that it is possible, that you can have transparency and oversight without having physical people there to observe. And I would really hope that with the use of technology like AI to analyze e-observer records, the satellite tracking, when you bring them all together, you can bring much greater transparency to the industry.
Totally agree also. I believe that technology will be a great tool for our industry. And I give an example, as been clearly said, electronic observer, but within ESSF, we are working also of the next generation of buoys to put on FAD that will be able to really understand very well what is behind, below a FAD. In order to be more selective, in order tomorrow to have maybe some rules to avoid the high level of bycatch and so on. So really, I agree that technology will be key to keep our industry sustainable.
Well.